Hello, everybody, and welcome to our systems test debrief of Cyberpunk Red. I am Nick, system admin, and I'm joined by Pav. Say hello, Pav.
Hello.
And I'm joined by Jay. Say hello, Jay.
Hi.
Hello, gang. How's it going?
Yes, good, thank you. And yourselves? I'm excited to wrap up our introduction and chats on Cyberpunk. Whoop whoop. It's been a fun game to play.
Yeah, indeed. We've managed to get on recording, so this is all a good start. So we'll see how we go. I think we finished up our playthrough of Red Chrome Cargo, and we're here to do our wrap up discussion of it, really. And I guess, from players' perspective, what did you enjoy it? I think, firstly, as a brief overview, I know we give our crit or miss at the end, but was it an enjoyable scenario for you both?
Yes, I think I enjoyed it thoroughly. It took me a while to get into it, though, I think from our first session going through, but that could have been just us playing together with, say, you, Nick, trying to give us hints and tips on who we knew, that sort of thing, and we probably weren't fully aware that that's the vibes you were going for at the time. But once we got into the rhythm of the scenario, I very much enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's such a distinct world. And so it's sort of I think that as well takes a bit of getting used to, a sort of like it because it's sort of like real world adjacent. Whereas I think so much of everything else we play is like so distinctly not anything like there's no hook. Whereas like this is not like no hook. There's no, we've played like fantasy in Edo, Japan, and we've played like Cthulhu, like 1920s, but Cthulhu in like Lovecraftian. I think there's something interesting about playing something that's like set in a year in a country, like in the US, that's like near to where we are, but like wildly different. And I think that like just like it takes a bit of time to adjust to like this is what's similar, this is what's different, if you know what I mean. Sorry, that wasn't very well articulated, but
No, I know it's getting into that headspace, as you said, Pav, as well. And I liken these first episodes, I always find, or the first hour or so when we're RPing, especially a new scenario or anything, it's really difficult because we're still working out what our characters are like. We're still working out what the vibe and the world is like. And it's a bit like when you start a new book and you're trying to get to grips with what these places are and what the characters are and everything like that.
Yeah, so I guess that's what felt clunky for me, is probably just our initial setup, getting to know each other, how you're going to DM the game, us as characters, how we're interacting, what we should and shouldn't know. I think there was probably just a bit of confusion, but I think that's more to do with our initial introduction setup more than the game itself.
it's interesting. It's interesting you say that because I don't feel like it was at all awkward. I thought it was like, so I'm interested in like what felt, what didn't work for you or what you would change. Because I think, yeah, my recollection was like, it was like classic, normal, standard kind of thing.
Maybe I just don't like the normal classic standard. I want to be able to just get into it, flow, know what I'm doing, know what my character's backstory is supposed to be, and potentially not be thrown by random facts that I thought I should know, but I didn't. As opposed to, because I can't remember, Nick, who the character you introduced to us, and I was like, is that my arch nemesis, the government agent, or my ex-lover? Because obviously I rolled a
Just
character
everyone.
that had those people in them, and they didn't come up in this scenario. However, I initially thought, oh, is that who it is?
Yeah, indeed. And that's somebody that I could have worked in, but I thought maybe we could save that for a juicier time. If we revisit Truth and Zero, it could be there's another adventure further down the line with more side quest TM content that we might be planning in the future. I wanted to give you a hook of that Militech corpo exec that you were looking into, just as somebody that would fit into your backstory that you were trying to expose, and maybe if the time was right, one of your rivals could just show up out of the woodwork. So I just thought I'd just throw you a random name of
Yeah,
somebody that you were looking into.
I did enjoy the world and the theme, though. This is my first time really getting into the cyberpunk world. I've not played the game. I watched some of the anime as we discussed to kind of prep for it, get my mind into it. But again, it's something completely new to me, or I so thought. And then we discussed that, there's a few other things I've watched on TV or film, such as The Matrix. We discussed was RoboCop cyberpunk in terms of the genre, as opposed to this specific world. And it's like, yeah, so it was quite easy to get my head into it. Low life, high tech, that sort of vibe, where the world's gone to shit, but technology is up there, and it's a mix of who has all the power and all the tech and keeping the little man down. And I felt I could relate to that struggle a little bit, being the working man. And we're living in a
Well,
world
yeah,
currently where the 1% hold all the wealth, and we are lowly slaves to the man.
yeah, the dystopian future narrative is all a bit close to home, isn't it? And I think that's the whole point of why this genre exists, is that everybody who, since it was written, there have been similar struggles that people have seen played out, and this game is an expression of revolution. And that's why it's very much about the people. And to jump forward slightly, in playing this game, it's very different in the way that it works and the structure from what I would say your traditional D&D dungeon crawling. Very different than the ones we have done, because it's not, there are scenarios and jobs that you do, but a lot of it then becomes, well, what do you do outside of those things? Gameplay can happen in the term of weeks, and as we saw, you have personal narratives that you will explore, and it's about connections and people, because you don't survive on your own. You've got to make connections, because the corpos, they all have their connections, they've got their money and everything. But the individual, how do you survive without your network around you? It's an interesting expression.
Just building on that, I think one of the things that I found very interesting was the sort of, sorry, not that I want to compare everything to D&D, but sort of one of the things I reflected on in the intro was like, all the role types are not classically geared towards the same, they don't, I'm trying to find the right form of words, but there's not a
Party composition.
everyone's background is like a career. And I think that then that's both like, it makes it interesting because like the thing that you do that's different and unique to you in some of them is more downtime focused rather than uptime focused. Like it's between sessions or like RPing over weeks of flash, like montage style cutscenes. Oh, like, Zero goes and like runs a clinic and like that's actually where he's manufacturing drugs, but it takes like hours and hours and hours to like make a drug. And so therefore it's like not something that we're going to sit, oh, can you all just sit around while I just synthesize some drugs for like 4 hours per drug kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like one of those things that you're like, oh, this is more like a downtime activity rather than uptime activity. Sort of like as if you had like the option of picking like being a blacksmith or a merchant in D&D is like how I liken it, is how I think about it. And it's interesting that then like how that changes. I think in some respects it's really cool because it gives you a different thing to like role play. Like I felt like it was fun role playing a like doctor, and like that's like my core profession, and like how does that like play into then like the game. But I feel like mechanically it sort of then, I don't know, it sort of, I didn't quite see how, I don't know. I think there are loads of ways you can fix this, but I think you have to like actively go in knowing about this system, that you like a session 0 is probably a load more important in this than in like, even for like a sort of small thing, or like I have a big thing about having a reason for being together in any RP system. I think it's like really important, and often like, I think that the sort of classic trope of like, oh, you all just like stumble together and now you have a problem, and then now you fix that problem at one time that you had a reason to be together, and now you are friends for life by force. Like never quite speaks to me. But I felt like even more so in this one. Why is a corpo hanging out with a solo, hanging out with a doctor, like what, like hanging out with a journalist? Like what do these people have in common, and like what's their reason for being part of a crew or going on jobs or like doing these things together? And how do they act with each other in their downtime? Is it like, are they like need-based relationships, or are they like background besties kind of thing? And I think that's like an interesting question, but like I think the mechanics, both like the mechanics actually don't really support that, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And I think it's that thing where you have to understand your character quite well to be able to do it effectively.
Yeah, it's like with my character being a journalist and then going and the scenario was basically a shoot 'em up. Whereas my skills were focused on taking content and being empathetic to people, being a people person, and the scenario was just pull out your gun and shoot. Well, the main part that required skills, at least. There was the
Yeah.
interactions pre and after, which were fine, but again, didn't really tie that much into being a media profession. It's the side quest that I feel we went on that tied into more like, what would my character do? What am I doing there? So stick along to hear the Cyberpunk scenario, and then as a bonus, you may get to hear all about my little side quest.
Yeah, and with these sessions, I try and find scenarios that are pre-made so that it is easy enough for me to do it. So I understand completely where you're coming from with both of you saying, well, why would I do this? Because it doesn't really suit my skill set. And with a lot of the looking around at scenarios, I try and find ones that are deemed suitable for introductions or to showcase the system. And in this case, the one I found was this one, the Red Chrome Cargo one, which is only one page it's the scream sheet. It's one page of scenario and then a page that showcases what the train looks like. So I was worried a bit about how much time we would be able to spend on it, but actually it turned out to be quite a decent chunk that we got for all.
Yeah, it was just interesting to me where you had this scenario. It's like basically a train heist. So why would you have a media tech on there? So I was just like, well, shall I record this? Is it to propagandize? Like trying to make something that fits the story, that fits with my character as well. Because while I'm proficient in handgun, I don't think I'd be the biggest expert on planning a train heist. You'd probably have a team full of all solos. So it didn't make sense to me from a story perspective why we were being selected. I could understand a med tech being there if something went wrong, and a net runner being there so they could hack things. So it didn't make sense that we didn't actually have any solos on our team, or even as a character plot, some NPCs were given to us by the DM.
Hornet had their means. They brought you as a media for the extra skills you could bring for that recording aspect, and as they said, it's good for business to showcase that they can take care of things when things go wrong. Which actually sometimes the word of mouth aspect, which we all know from medias, is more valuable than just another gun in hand. Plus, in golf books, they work in mysterious ways.
That's true.
I think that's the bit of like Cyberpunk like is quite interesting. It's like you have these jobs, but then also everyone is like, I was going to say a street rat. Not everyone's a street rat, but like everyone then like rolls up their sleeves and like pulls out a gun, like, and isn't like if you're a corpo or if you're a med tech or if you're a journalist, it's like, oh no, in this world, everyone shoots people.
It's sort of survival of the fittest. Right.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I mean about like it being slightly more challenging because it's like real world adjacent. Like if this was set in a fantasy world, I think you'd have no issue being like, yeah, of course media people, or like in like 2200, like, oh, of course media people go around shooting people. Like, so, it's like
it's kill or be killed. Darwinism at its finest.
Yeah, but I think like it's one of the things, the cognitive dissonance, I think, of just like it being like almost adjacent to our current time and like set in the US and like, just up the coast in California. Like it's sort of like, oh, this is like, I have to like, it's almost a slightly harder than if it was like Edo Japan or like, whatever it is kind of thing.
It's too close to reality for it to be believable.
Well, which I find hilarious. You need to move yourself further, if that makes sense. You have to like shift your own mindset harder.
What I found funny was even with my my media skill set based on my roles, it clearly was just a side hustle for me because I was much better at just shooting people than actually doing my day job.
Well, yeah, that's sometimes the funny thing about how different narratives evolve when it's a dice-based game as well. That's the good stuff. It's like how Gord could never hit anything with a spear, despite being a fighter in our D&D campaign. That narrative just arose because it was crap at rolling dice.
Yeah. Although I do feel like what Pav said is an interesting point that I feel is that I went into this expecting the skills to feel very satisfying. They're similar in a way to the Cthulhu like bank of like 40 to 50 skills, all very detailed. I think actually in playing it, I didn't feel I didn't feel as rewarded from the skills as I did. I didn't get the same sense of satisfaction of like, I've built a character that does this thing well and they're bad at other things. And I think that's because of the pulling through of the base stats. That actually, if your base stats are good, your like top ups don't really mean too much on top of that, if that makes sense. Sorry, obviously they do, right? Like you get if you've got like your highest you can have in the stat is 8, you can then have 6 skill that you put on top of that makes it a 14, and then you roll on top of that. Great, like, but then where the difficulty of like, I think like straightforward task is 11, and then like
It's 9, 13, 15. Oh, 9, 13, 15, 17, 21. And then above that somewhere too.
And one of the things that I felt a little disappointed from the skills system was that I felt like Truth and Zero didn't feel differently good at things based on our skill checks. And that's not a criticism of like...
No, I think this is part of the scenario as well. And this is where a longer campaign, you can showcase these things more. Yes. So you'll come up against more scenarios where different skills will be relevant. Whereas again, this being a one and done, just a shoot 'em up means things are less likely to be involved.
Yes, but you could say the same about Cthulhu. Cthulhu's built around being one shots, but like the nature of those skills being like you can either do this thing or you just can't, felt more satisfying to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there wasn't... Interestingly, I went into this thinking that because it's a D10 based and not D20 like D&D, it would feel less swingy and more rewarding. And actually, I felt it was the other way. Or like similar to D&D.
Yeah,
actually, like
it's the same,
it's the same
skill resolution.
It's the same skill resolution.
It's where do you put checks,
Yeah, right. And that your baseline is that everyone gets such a high like pump to it that actually hitting like a 9 or 11, if you've got a base of like 6, 7, 8, you're passing that skill check 50% of the time.
Would you rather you failed more than succeeded more?
Yes, I would rather. So, I mean, like that might be self-punishing.
But you were complaining about Ronin. When Ronin gave you less than a 50% chance at succeeding, you were saying, well, this is not good.
Sorry, let me be clear.
You can't have it both ways.
No. Yeah, that's very fair. Very well called out.
I would prefer to have the roles work more in my favor more of the time, just because I'm more of the story. I'm into the story. I want it to progress. I want my character to do well. So ideally, I want my roles to go well as well.
Sorry, just to be really clear, what I'm saying is that I feel like I want to succeed at the things that I feel like I've spent time training in. That like I want to feel good at the things that I feel that I'm meant to feel good at, and I want to feel bad at the things I'm meant to feel bad at. And I think that that's my issue with like skill checks generally in game systems, is that sometimes you can be good at things that you are not meant to be good at by luck of a dice roll or by like. Or just by like baselining
luck, right?
goods. Yeah, but like, how do you have beginner's luck in like anyway? Like, so like a technical skill check. There were technical skill checks.
There are checks that you can't do because that DC could just be too high. Again, and this is again where it differs from D&D. Is that D&D you do have a chance to do anything, but even with this, say your skill is 3, you have no points in your accounting skill. You can still roll a 10 and then roll to give you a chance to roll on top of it. But you could still fail that check if it was a 17 or 21 if you roll poorly enough. So there is that option. Maybe I made the test too low for you. Maybe that was something there too.
So, Nick, how did you find to run the game?
Very interesting, because I find when I have some sort of framework to work of, and this might just be me for running it as a system or running systems in general, I like having those boundaries that I can think around, those safety nets. When I have to go full improv, I find it quite interesting. I found it overall, though, to be pretty smooth. It's maybe a better understanding of what different skills people have might be a good thing for a DM, so that you can understand what challenges to set people and what stats are the underlying for different skills, which I think is on the character sheet, but it's not too easy to find from a GM's perspective. The combat is very tactical, and I really like doing theatre of the mind style of play, where we say you are near somebody or you are within reach of this, but it relies a lot on ranges and cover. And so, us doing that and having to explain where everyone is individually. So, we did have a couple of instances where, say, I had somebody charge you, and I was like, oh, well, they will see you before they charge you, and it didn't quite work out how I thought it had. But that's, if we had a grid map and did it that way, it would be better. But it's that argument of immersion versus practicality. So overall, I thought running it pretty simple, I would say. Once I managed to get you guys on the hook to do the job, it was pretty simple.
Did you have any sticking points with the rules or the scenario and how it flowed?
There's a few. Yeah, I think, as I said, getting you guys to just sign up might have been my main sticking point. But once we got past that, it was all right. There's a couple of bits that you need to just be aware of, really, when running it, and it's always those little rules that you forget. The basics of the system are simple enough. There's a check value, you roll and you add a couple of numbers together to beat it. It's stuff like, how does auto fire work? How, remembering to ablate armor and keeping track of that bookkeeping can be a bit problematic, as we saw at times. And little bits like installing cyberware afterwards, or recovering hit points when you rest, which was something that was a bit hidden, which we spent a bit of time looking through, but we cut that out. So I think overall there weren't too many sticking points. I think actually the main sticking point for me was making sure that I was lore accurate enough to aspects of it, because when you have your own homebrew thing, it's really easy to just go, oh, this is the answer, and hand wave it. But when you're playing in a fully established piece or a fully established world, I am always very nervous about saying the wrong thing that happens or exists or whatever. So I'm sure if people want to, feel free to let me know everything I got wrong, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of it. But that's how we learn too,
Yes, fair enough. I mean, as a player, for an established setting and gameplay, I did find it quite easy to pick up once. A story aside, the mechanics of the game generally seem quite easy, right? You roll this for this, your stat goes this plus that. So I found that quite easy. I think the one thing that we didn't quite get was, the rank, how that played into your ability to do your job. It took me a while. So why is my roll so low for, say, making a story believable? And it's like, well, my rank is 4. I made good evidence points, so I've got a basic roll 5 and under, which seems fair enough. If you're on a D10, that's half the numbers are available to you. And then the heartbreak of rolling a 6, it just really got me. It's like, oh, no one's going to believe me. So that part of the game, right, fair enough, but a bit odd still, seeing as I've got all the evidence. I'm a media journalist, and I've still got such a 50-50 chance by the end of it of getting my story believed. I think apart from that, it all seemed quite good. I liked how the humanity and the empathy works. So you add more cyberware, then you lose those points, you become less believable, more robotic. But overall, very easy to pick up and play. And I don't know how you felt the same, Jay.
Yeah. Well, I think 50% chance of being believed in this world is quite good odds, to be honest. Even
it's
with all
that
the evidence.
you are small fish, aren't you? That's the thing about it. When you start out, you're really small fish, and you can increase those odds obviously as you increase your rank. But no, it's heartbreaking that you had to. Yeah, when you get the 50% roll and don't the coin flip and don't quite get it, it's just it's a shame. And I think with the way, hopefully, that we span it, it was that actually, your story was great. It's just the Corpo news machine managed to get there and snuff it. But sorry, Jay, what did you think about everything?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was. There are a lot of. I felt like generally it was straightforward. I felt like a lot of the skills. Sorry, I know I've harped on about the skills. I felt like the skills didn't feel quite mutually exclusive enough. I felt like there was a bit of like overlap between different skills, or they didn't jump out as like this thing would be this skill check and not that other skill check. Which might just be like back to my issue about the naming convention. Like there are two conversation ones that are slightly different.
I was going to say, do you have an example of any?
Yeah, there are two conversations. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's conversation, there's human perception, there's a different perception. There's perception, intelligence, awareness. There's human perception, empathy, social skill. As like I get it, you can read it, but like just call it something else. Like, please. Like
that's your insight check, effectively, the human perception.
Yeah, right. So then it's like if you like and I get not wanting to use like D&D terminology, but like don't have two things on the skill sheet that have the same name. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, with the tech and med tech thing.
Yeah, and I felt there was
is that your main sticking point?
No, sorry. What about the skills? No, my actual issue with the skills is like...
naming. The naming stuff your main sticking point with the whole game?
No. I have lots of sticking points.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, really?
No, don't get me wrong. I did love it. I just felt like there's a lot of skills that I don't know how much, like basic tech, cyber tech, first aid, and like weapons tech, cyber tech, basic tech. Like, would a DM know? Like, if you're being given a full module to run and it would be like, here at this point, check this. Like, how strict should you be as a DM to be like, or a GM to be like, no, I'm sorry, I need a weapons tech, and I'm only going to take a weapons tech versus, which I get is all about personal play and stuff, but like, this feels different from Cthulhu, which has the same number of skills, but are much more mutually exclusive. You couldn't be like, I'm going to use a running check to jump. You would be like, no.
To counter that, though,
yeah,
a cyber arm is very different than a gun. Just because you can take apart a cyber arm doesn't mean you can dismantle and clean a gun.
Yeah, no, I sorry, don't get me wrong. I don't have an issue with them being here. I just did not feel like, again, I don't know. It might have been just the scenario we ran.
I would say then, actually, a lot of these skills, to be part of it, this stuff is aimed at downtime stuff too. These skills are aimed at what you do outside of the robbing trains and, hustling, whatever you might do. I can't think of a better example, so I'll just leave this awkward rambling in. So weapons tech stuff might be, it would be for if you are a tech and you want to upgrade stuff, and cyberware for you as a med tech there would be, or your basic cyberware tech skill. This is where those feel, they'd be good in certain scenarios, but they're also more relevant outside of time pressure situations.
Yeah,
where you'll be using them.
Yeah, I totally get that. And then I think the other thing was combat for me felt a bit. I think boring is really unfair. I think we didn't. I was reading some other stuff on this, and they're like, "Oh, it's like the whole idea of the combat is like it's like how you describe it, and sort of like more in the like, I slide over here and I'll like peek my head out and like aim to take a shot or like whatever." But like it felt, the mechanics of it just felt a bit straightforward and a bit like, I was like, my options in combat are like wait and shoot or move and shoot. And
Yes.
I think again,
Yeah.
like I did not pick a character that had lots of options. Like I could have gone down the more like solo route to have more options in combat of like auto fire or like etc etc. But like generally I like, and I think the other bit was cover didn't quite make a lot of sense to me in terms of like when you get it, when you don't get it, like how it actually works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a it's that holding an action versus being in cover thing that isn't clearly explained. So if you're holding an action to, or you're preparing an action to shoot out behind a bit of cover, are you visible? Are you not visible? And that's the real thing. Cover is just, the whole thing of it was if you're completely obscured, you can't be shot at. I think that's
Yeah.
the main thing there.
Yes. But when the book is like cover is really important and essential, and then it like slightly fudges it, whereas like I've read other rule sets like the Warhammer 40k one has a cool ruling that's like you're in cover, but like it depends then where you get shot, which is determined by your dice roll. And if that bit is behind cover, then it doesn't hit you, it hits the cover. Or in Mothership, which hopefully we're going to get to next, they're like, if you're shooting from cover, you're not in cover, basically. For all the purposes of the rules, you are not in cover if you can see to then make a shot at someone else. You don't get to like move, shoot, move to then hide back behind cover. Because otherwise you end up with just like these standoffs that are like boring.
Yeah, it's far too important to have it not be more explicit. Oh, I guess, and this is where explosives and grenades come into it. So you can hold up behind cover, but explosives will take care of that. But yeah, fair enough.
And I agree about the like the minutia of the tracking the ablating of the armor. There's just like a lot of like bits on the character sheet that's getting adapted at different points in combat.
So was there anything that stood out as good for either of you mechanics wise? I know Pav, you mentioned the empathy and humanity aspect. Was there anything else that you liked there?
I liked how you could do things, the awareness skills, for example, my concentration, lip reading, perception. I didn't try any dancing, obviously, on my body skills. We didn't get to hit up the clubs there, but I like how there's controls. The categorization makes sense to me, technique, and then the education. So overall, I think it was laid out quite well. You can kind of see where everything fits in, and there's a lot of stuff on how your character dresses, how you interact with people, because you've got cool, you've got personal grooming, streetwise, wardrobe style. So that doesn't come into account, I feel, in other games. Whereas here, how you look and how you're perceived by other people, that's going to happen in the real world. People judge you on your first look. So I like how it's no different here.
Yeah. It's super important, actually. And it's something that I think, I tried to describe what people were wearing, how the style of it all, but it's something that you could definitely use could use in scenarios. So, getting yourself into a corporate swanky event or into a party that you may not be able to get to otherwise.
And you can also infuse a bit more of your own personality within the character as well. Like how would you dress and make your character dress the same way, or how would you like to dress? And you can live your life through the character.
Yeah.
Like the emoticons and all the skins you can buy in computer games.
That's it. Your tech hair and all your flashing tattoos and everything. Was there anything else that you could think of that you enjoyed mechanically?
I think it was just very easy to play once you got the gist of everything, and most mechanics you could work out the story through. Right, well, my character can do this, this, and this, because I think we just established at the beginning it was slightly frustrating that you pick this character with a career and most of it's actually not that useful within the game, but it's how you use the skills that you have within the game. So even though I was a media, I was still pretty handy with a handgun. I need to get a thesaurus, I think, and learn some new words. But it was very good, I found, playing this game.
I think everybody, that's the thing about Night City, as we said before, everybody has to know how to defend themselves. So you've got some expertise in some manner. And we didn't get a chance to properly explore the roles. And I think that's where it lends itself to a more long form campaign there. We did try the media bit, which, spoilers, didn't quite work out with your believability there, even with all the evidence, and Zero got a chance to mend
Did
up some peeps.
I started and ended with using my medicine skill checks.
Exactly. Yeah, you ripped out some cyberware as well.
And I made some drugs.
Yeah.
And I took
you
some
did
drugs,
that off screen at the beginning, didn't you? Just a rip-roaring time. Yeah. I think
we're currently recording from my meth lab.
Yeah. Meth lab / surgery /
No.
You're a weird meth agent that used dice to create your drugs.
Yeah.
It's a weird new technique.
But no, I think the only mechanic, like reflecting back on it, that I felt was like slightly unfulfilling compared to other systems was critical successes, actually. Because with the DV tests being like, they're known quantities a lot of the time, right? Like, what number you have to hit in order to shoot and hit someone from a certain range. Or like, I knew from a lot of my medicine checks, like there were very few unknown DV checks. But even where there are, like rolling a 10, rolling a 10 equals success anyway, if that makes sense, on the D10.
I also, and to jump in quickly on your points there, no, because you were saying about how you didn't feel good at the things you were trained at, but everything that you were trained at, you guys absolutely bossed all those tests. You caned it. So it's interesting with the DV checks there, is that if you have a high base skill and then even a medium level of training, you're most likely going to hit professional checks of 17 pretty easily.
Yeah. Right. And so then I think for me, rolling a critical miss felt good, actually. Like, I think I really like the critical miss mechanic. I found the critical success mechanic underwhelming on the roll to hit or roll to succeed a check. And I think that was the bit that I'm sure you could do, like, we could play around with it more, and like we could think about, like, with more experience, you DM it to be like, oh, you get extra special things, but
you have
just
added
half
effects.
Of the course, like, it felt very like unsatisfying critically hitting with a weapon in combat, as opposed to like on the damage die, which did happen a few times and was very satisfying. Like, that just for me felt like, well, if I hit on a 9 and I hit on a 10 and I really hit, great.
Yes. Yeah. The only time it would probably matter is if you're doing something like called shots, where the check is harder.
Right, but I feel like for there, you're kind of...
It's that you're playing the game, aren't you, of risk analysis.
You're still like, if you would need to roll a 10 and then roll a 3 or higher or a 4 or higher, yes, but like, why would you take something that you have like a 6% chance of success or like an 8% chance? Do you know what I mean? Like,
sometimes you really got to make that headshot,
Right, but then couldn't just a 10 be a hit, an auto hit? Like, what the adding,
because you still don't have the skill for it, right?
No, I get it, but like, that's what I mean. It just feels.
I guess it just felt that chance.
A bit underwhelming.
Yeah. Oh no, I completely get that, and it's basically in my mind, it's to let you hit those 30s potentially when you don't have the chance, because you need to roll that really low and then do it again, and so it gives you the opportunity for those moments at the table where you go, oh, remember when this very unlikely thing happened, and what a great time that was. So I guess that's the thing for it. But I do agree with you, rules as written, I don't think there's anything above just adding more dice to make you do that thing better.
But no, I had fun. I thought it was a good experience. Like, I thought the mechanics, I thought everything fed in. And I did have lots of fun. I did find the rules more complex than was necessary. I don't mind a complicated rule set. I felt like the complexity didn't add as much as I felt like it subtracted for me in net balance.
Do you want complicated rules as a means of emulating real life? Is that something that's satisfying in a way? So what leads complicated rules to be something that are good for you, where
That's a
they thematically
really,
make and mechanically make sense?
yeah, that's a
Or is
really
it
good question.
sometimes, yeah, that's because that's the only reason I would think having complication in there is when you're trying to simulate a real life model.
I'm trying to think of now. I think complexity where it adds optionality is very satisfying.
Do you
So
have an
like,
example?
so like Pathfinder is like
We can't
there
talk
are
about other
like
games.
well no which we will role play it. We will like systems test at some point. It's very complex, but it's like sorry, D&D 4th edition. There's lots of complexity in it, but the complexity is all about adding player optionality. You have greater things, the options to draw from, which it's like added complexity in that way. I felt like the complexity on this felt like in the
Complexity for
minutia.
complexity's sake.
Yeah, like the number of different attributes. There were just lots of elements of it that I was like, oh, that's another thing to remember. And it didn't feel so grounded in the like the world and the mechanics and the sort of ethos that it felt memorable for me.
To take a step back, do we think that's a newbie problem? Would that be something that would, you think, feel comfortable over time? Because if you look at, we're all very comfortable with D&D 5e. If you look at that from an outsider perspective, that is pretty daunting and pretty complicated. And so this is the question. We've done one session, we played quite a lot of it, and there are still things we can't get the handle of. I'm interested. I don't know the answer myself, but
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing.
I thought about this a lot, actually, about whether I thought the complexity was something that I would, like, with practice enjoy or with practice get used to. And on balance, I thought it was the latter and not the former, personally.
I think that's interesting, actually. I think, yeah. Pav, what do you think? Did you enjoy yourself? Where do you land on the whole complexity, simplicity bit? And how did you find this on a scale of what you're used to versus, I guess what you're used to, really?
I think it's very similar. So I think the platform I'm most used to is D&D. Felt pretty similar. Like find your stat, roll against it, add your score to it. There was also an element of Call of Cthulhu where you had your skills that you could roll your base number, and then you had specific skills that added to that number. So it made sense. Those made up your final score plus your roll dice. What I did find annoying was there was just so many skills that you had in the midst of the story, then trying to look for it on your sheet. I found it was very frustrating, and also just I think just not understanding what all of them are. So there was a lot of as a beginner, right? I want to do this. What skill does that come under? Can I roll for it? What can I do? And there's certain things that you want to do. No, I just can't because I don't have those skills. But that's how the
Yeah,
story goes, and you just find alternative ways, like you adapt, overcome, change, as the meme goes. Is that the Bear
yeah.
Grylls one?
Is it effectively you found it was immersion breaking, having that disconnect when you're trying to role play and get into the narrative of it, and then all of a sudden you have to step back from that and go, what can I use to do this? It didn't flow as easily.
I don't think that's part of the story. I think that's potentially just because we don't know the game as well. So once you get used to something, you know how something works, it flows much easier. Same with any task that you're doing, really. So I think that would improve with time.
No, fair enough.
It is interesting though, because I think actually another element of the complexity from my perspective was like, I think this is potentially the first game I've played that sits in a world that is pre-established and very like built out. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of like, like we know that there was a nuclear bomb. This sort of stuff that like exists.
But would that not be the same with Ronin? Like we knew that there was the giant eclipse, and that was part of the
Yeah, no, I
story
was
setting
thinking
as
about
well.
that. Yeah, no, I was thinking about that. But it was interesting because in that it was sort of like there's the world with this like world stage event that's happened, but then it seemed pretty freeform for like how you want to play it. Whereas like Night City is so canon, all the districts are so canon. Like there's so much written in the book about the gangs and about everything. Sorry, Nick, I didn't know if you want to
No, it's fine. In a way, also with Ronin, you had the background, but it was very much a bottle episode, wasn't it? You were in one place, and this is the thing about the things we have done so far is they have been pretty much self-contained little areas. Whereas Night City, you had the whole city at your disposal. There was anywhere you could have gone,
And
and
I
that
did.
exactly, and that is daunting. As from a DM's perspective, that is daunting, especially if I'm not too au fait. And it's very there's that whole argument of how loyal do you be to the canon, but actually it's our game and our world, so who cares if you just make something up and it's a little bit wrong or whatever. But not it's not wrong because it is the story that we are creating, and so that is the canvas, and we are here adding our little accidental Bob Ross trees to it.
totally agree. It's one of those interesting dynamics though of like, I think the completionist part of me wants to do like, if you put me in a situation like playing D&D and playing a Forgotten Realms D&D are different for me. Like one is a like build your own adventure, and the other is like there is this world with loads of lore. And if you know more lore than someone else, then like maybe that's part of your character and stuff, but like that's a real advantage disadvantage. And I think that's one of the challenges, I think, for this game. If you have different players coming to it new, like that could be some of the tension that you see at the table between like, oh no, but Night City is this thing, because the book says Night City is this. The book said this thing happened here, and you would know that. Of course you would know that. Like actually it becomes this like slight information differential, which is a bit like challenging. But I wonder if that was some of the feelings that like Pav had when he first when at the end of like the first episode, was this feeling of like, oh, I've come to this rules blind. I've come to this like purposely to be like, what would it be like to pick up and play? And actually like there isn't that informational disparity, I think is like an interesting. It is interesting because I don't think it exists. I think for me, sorry, this is all like it adds to the complexity, because it's a second layer of not only do you have mechanical complexity, you actually have like backstory complexity, which is not something we've encountered in other games, actually.
It impacts your ability for improv as well, because there are points where you try to contribute to the conversation, and rightly or wrongly, then I as DM was like, well, actually, no, that's not quite right, or you would think this or know this, which can obviously lead to frustration because it reduces agency.
I think that was just at the very beginning for me, and as we went on, you got more used to it and understanding how it worked. So I think it improved for sure over time.
Yeah, definitely. But it's just an interesting barrier to overcome. And as Jay said, when you're working in somewhere that has established lore, I personally find it really difficult. If I'd actually just gone, do you know what, I'm setting the game in London, I probably would have felt way more comfortable with it and with just making stuff up and going on the fly.
You'll be judged by the hardcore fans that you've ruined. You've ruined
they'll
it.
never
What
listen
have you
to us
doing?
anyway.
What are you talking about? They'll listen to us and they'll buy the t-shirts.
But there is a bit of like doing justice to the systems that we're representing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Think like, yeah, I feel, and especially like the whole in language. Anyway, yeah, I both feel like this is an absolute passion project. Like you can really tell this is someone who's like built. I can't remember the creator's name. Sorry, that's
Cody.
me.
No, sorry, it's Mike Pondsmith. Cody Pondsmith
Mike
wrote
Pondsmith,
the scenario.
And like it's like really clearly an evolved labor of love. Like this is like so much story and like worked hand in hand with all of this. To say, I actually think that they're bringing out a new version set in 77, like after now that the game's like fully released, and I'm really interested to see how much that adapts with if that has a much more simplified set of mechanics that is more in line with where the game has taken the rule set, or if it is going to withhold a lot of the level of complexity that it currently has.
Well, speaking of that, Jay, I think they've just released a little downloadable article about doing quick hacks as netrunners in Cyberpunk Red, which would be interesting. So then you can So a quick hack, Pav, is where you could basically hack somebody's cyberware from across the room rather than plugging into a net architecture and doing something like that. So a bit like, I think it's been described a bit like spells in a weird way. So you could shut down somebody's cyber eyes and stop them from working and then get the advantage on them.
Eyes.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So somebody's just, some security guard just wandering around like, oh no, I can't see.
That's what happens. Then there's an advantage to being 100% pure, homegrown, organic.
The natty, that's it. Was there anything else that either of you wanted to raise on rules or, characters or anything like that?
I think on character, I had an idea of what my character would be like, and then playing, I felt bad because I clearly compromised on my character's beliefs in certain aspects because I just got annoyed with how the story was going, where we got fucked over by the gang, and I'm like, well, how would I get revenge?
That's good. That's character evolution,
morals.
And also it shows that your character has depth. This is the thing: no character ever survives contact with the enemy, does it? It's really interesting that we all build up these ideas of what our character will be, and then when you put them in settings, it's interesting to see how they react, really. And unless you do some work in the background and do some little imaginary scenarios, like have little imaginary arguments in your head beforehand about how would they deal with this situation or whatever, it's really interesting how they come to life. And I actually found that was an interesting part in that, you speak one ideal, but your actions carry out another one. And I think it makes for a nuanced, it makes for a person. You're not some whiter than white paladin. You still do good stuff, but you're human like the rest of us. And that's, yeah.
And I think the way my character interacted with Zero, our characters, I feel like, did not get along. They were brought together by circumstance versus true friendship or anything camaraderie. It was colleagues, work buddies, but outside the office, we would not have interacted. So to me, I felt that, it felt the frustrations of, when you at work and, someone does something to annoy you, but you have to play all happy families because that's what you do as a professional.
You've got fascists
them.
trying to shoot you, so
exactly.
You've got to play
you've got to remain professional.
Exactly.
Especially want to secure that bank to help the cause, which at the ultimate, that's what drove my frustration as the character, that I could not fulfill what my character wanted to do because of certain things. He felt robbed, therefore I had to do something to get revenge.
That's Night City, baby. Reflecting on it, I did think, maybe I went a bit too far with that on my end, because it was just meant to be let's get rid of the goods and show you that the city's a bit of a mean place, and sometimes you eat the dog and sometimes the dog eats you. But then revenge was definitely on the cards. Which, was interesting.
But it is interesting that this is not specific to this system, but generally when you're role playing, that sort of idea of what do you have in mind when you put down a character versus when you go to actually role play, how does the character then react in that circumstance? Or it was interesting. I didn't go in being I'm going to role play Zero in this very specific way. I went in being oh yeah, he's definitely a doctor and that's definitely really important to him, but he has very low humanity. And what does that look like? How does a doctor who has very low humanity see the world? And in a world of this cyberpunk, I really love the context, the setting, the vibe. There's something very appealing to me about this question of machine versus humanity, EQ versus IQ, what, I don't know. I really love that as an existential question and framing. So I did, and then I sort of then almost role played it in a way that I wasn't expecting to be as annoying as I was. Do you know what I mean? I was oh wow, this is probably what Zero would do in this situation, but bloody hell, this is irritating. I am sorry.
That's what my character would do. We're only on our third system, and we've reached that's what my character would do status. Oh no,
that's what my character would do, and my character would get bloody annoyed with your character.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I kind of like that. I had this doesn't get metaphor. I think was my in my from
bloody hell.
Did you genuinely have that as a note?
I think it's
Because
important
there was that point with Hornet where I went through about 3 different metaphors, and I was like, oh, fuck's sake.
Yeah, I had that, and then actually I built that with the low humanity. My intention was sort of disassociate. Like, what does it look like in a world where like humanity is a thing that gets eaten up by machines actively? Like, and how does it look and feel when you choose to like
Yeah, I would have
replace your
thought
limbs?
you would have come across much more colder and less talkative. Because
Well, I
for
think that's
someone that's
different
got
people,
low
though. I think other
humanity,
people would.
yeah, for someone that was low humanity, I was like, you're talking a lot of human words there.
No, but that's
As in
cool.
just
Anyway.
The humanity aspect is it basically I think there's, when you look at it in the book, it says there's, when you start to get into cyber psychosis, there's 5 or 6 things that you expect to find in somebody who is a cyber psycho, and it's basically if you start losing these aspects, and it's a way for you to role play humanity loss essentially. So it's not straight like borging out and becoming a slathering lunatic. You can have highly functioning cyber psychos, but they are effectively psychopaths or sociopaths, rather
Yeah,
than deranged lunatics.
and it's not like human to robot. I think that's the other thing that's interesting. It's not like you become more robotic and less. I don't know.
Nice. So I think that we've kept people long enough. We'll move on to our favourite section, crit or miss. So let's start with Jay. And I know Jay doesn't like the crit as a ranking system. So this time, Jay, how many critical
How many
wounds?
psycho arm? How many
Yeah.
cyber implants?
how
How many
levels of
critical
humanity
wounds?
are you willing
Yeah.
to lose to play this game?
No, well, think it's like, how many cyber arms out of 10 do you give this?
I would give it 7 cyber arms out of 10.
Wow,
And
that's a lot of cyber arms. That's a lot of humanity loss.
My reason is I really, really like the theme, the vibe, the world that they've built, the abilities of all the different like cyber build-ons. For me, the things that hold it back, actually, maybe it's more like a 6, to be honest, out of 10. The things that
One of
hold
the
it
arms
back,
fell off.
yeah, I think the thing that slightly holds it back for me is like some of the the complexity of the mechanics, the complexity of the world that it's set in, that's quite fixed. And I hear all your like, yeah, you can totally like ad lib, etc., etc. And I think and I think, and we touched on this as well, but like the roles themselves being very like that actually the complexity of having to role play a career that is a downtime activity is like, it adds a whole nother layer of complexity that you have like that ethos as well, like from an like both from a DM and like what am I doing perspective, but also from a role playing perspective. Like I was like, oh, it'd be cool to play a Colpo, but like I actually just can't imagine that for myself. Maybe that's my own limitations. But anyway, there, sorry.
Okay. 7 down to 6 cyber arms. Pav, crit or miss, or you can do it how many cyber arms you'd like as well out of 10. But I hope you'll stick to our
Cyber
traditional
legs
system.
for Pav.
Yeah.
Just the one. If only I could have a real cyber leg to replace my my leg with its torn ACLs and the battle scars, but no, I'm going to give this one a crit. It was a slow burner for me, mainly because I just couldn't get into it at the beginning, but once I understood it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The mechanics were slightly more complicated in terms of doing the abilities, but again, it's one of those things where the more you do it, the more you get used to it. I would definitely play that one again. Even if it's a different character expanding on it, it would be nice to do something that was a mission that was more related to my role.
So this is an interesting one. I think this is probably a roll with advantage putting it into a crit, if that makes sense. Because I've got very mixed feelings about this. I found it, again, I love the world, I love the setting. It's not a miss for me, but it's not quite a crit as well. it was, and this is probably my own limitations, I think, with it. There's so much RPing that comes with it, and it's that personal connections RPing, I think, is what you need to develop really more. That's what this game really thrives on, or feels like it thrives on. Combat, it could have been how I played it, but could have been something that could have had a bit more pizzazz to it. And I did play them a bit as dummies. I could have been a bit more mean in it as well. But those are the bits for me. I'm just going to look at my notes just to make sure I have now, and I'll cut some stuff out to make it sound more streamlined.
I think that's all fair. Did you find any bits in particularly challenging as a? I mean, you talked a bit about the role playing, but like as a games master, as the GM.
Yeah, not rolling high enough to wound you all. That's the bit I found annoying.
Stop shooting with shotguns that you guys aren't trained in.
Oh no, I've shot you both with heavy pistols now that have dinked off your armor, both of you, which has been very sad.
You did punch me a few times. That worked.
I know, that's where melee is much better. But melee is where it's at. I think overall, yeah, I'd like to play it more. I think is the real thing there. I think it's one that I'd like to do more of. So yeah, it's like just a crit. It was like on a 2, and then the dice moved to a 20. I think is how I would view it. With that, we will let the nice people get on with their day. Unless there's any final points to round up.
The truth will set you free.
Systems Test,
Execute.
signing out. If you want to know more about the podcast, follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky, searching Systems Test.